We saw the biggest liquidation event in its history. $2 billion worth of market positions wiped off. There's even speculation that number is underreported because the API limits of exchanges reporting this data, they can only hit so frequently.
Senator Lumen's proposed in her Bitcoin Act was that they revalue their gold reserve. Essentially, the US has more gold than any other country, company, person in the world.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. Crypto catch up. I don't know why I took such a long pause. I don't know. It's a very suspenseful, eventful episode, I feel. There's a lot that's happened in a week.
Mate, you don't usually do the intro, so I get you're a bit a bit out of practice.
Yeah, I'm a bit rusty, but also, I don't know, I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, mate. It's, we had a massive day yesterday. I know trading volumes at SwiftX were through the roof. A lot of people buying, a lot of people selling as well. Yep. So we're here to unpack it all. But yeah, what's first up?
Where do we start? So let's just talk a timeline of events, I think. We went into Friday, saw a whole bunch of chatter about things called tariffs. Many of us, including myself, didn't quite understand what the implications of this were. Saw the market open on Monday, absolutely red. Equities were down. Crypto, a lot of assets crashed. We saw a lot of altcoins even putting in what you could put, I guess, as a label as capitulation candles. We're talking about big, fast moves. A lot of meme coins down like 60% on the, over the weekend and into Monday. And then everyone's just left wondering what happened to this bull market, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked, taken aback by it. Like XRP, we've seen do massive moves recently, was down 25, 30%.
Yep.
Bitcoin dropped below 92K after being, over 100K, I think, over the weekend. So we're here to unpack it all, and that's probably going to be our focus for today. Is like, where are we in this market? Because some people might be a little bit apprehensive to even, get more involved in it. Are we still in a bull market? Like, is this normal for a bull market? So here to unpack it all, try and reference previous bull markets, understand the tariffs a little bit more, and understand where we could go from here.
Yep. Get everyone a bit more confident by the end of the episode. I think that's the key, right?
Absolutely. So I think the big call out, as you said there, Pav, was the tariffs. So it might sound a bit boring, but it's probably the reason for why we, had so much bloodshed yesterday, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Not just in crypto, but other risk markets like, tech stocks and other things.
I think just the unpredictability of, what Trump's done since he's come into office, he's just been very much shoot from the hip, but very obviously tactically. A lot of the tariffs are coming in a very aggressive frequency. Like he just point at one country, then move on to the next, move on to the next. So there was growing concern that, who else is potentially going to get sanctioned with these tariffs? There's talks of the EU, Japan, China, the likes. It's all happening. No one was safe, right? So Mexico and China were the initial propagators of a lot of the fear in the market heading into the weekend trading. And crypto being 24/7 kind of started to price in that fear while the rest of the markets were asleep is probably the best way I could articulate what we saw happen come Monday as soon as the markets open. No other way to say it, crash. Everything gapped down on the open.
The shock came from Canada, right? And Mexico, because in the lead up to, the presidential election, he was campaigning a lot for like tariffs on China. I think we also saw that in his last presidential term. But something that at least I didn't hear it from him was tariffs on, Canada and Mexico. It's two neighbors, right? So it imposed a 25% tariff on both Canada and Mexico and 10% tariff on China. And Canada basically retaliated very quickly, imposing the same 25% tariff because obviously, a lot of imports that Canada gets are from the US. So I guess it does impact the US as well. But I guess this is Trump just throwing his weight around, trying to, act on a lot of the things that he said he would.
Yeah, he wants to get that border control up. He wanted them to come to the party for trafficking, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we saw the market, we saw the biggest liquidation event in its history. $2 billion worth of market positions wiped off. There's even speculation that number is underreported because the API limits of exchanges reporting this data, they can only hit so frequently. So the damage could be north of $2 billion. We just don't know. Maybe something will come out in the next few days that might be even $5 to $10 billion. Who knows? But yeah, I guess what was interesting to see, like I came into the office this morning, obviously we're talking about how bad it looked yesterday and look, we could see a recovery, maybe start to build. Instantly, we saw some news about these tariffs being on pause because both Mexico and Canada came to the party, came to some agreements overnight while we were sleeping. And lo and behold, we're seeing massive rebounds and recoveries across a lot of assets. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so, we had a bit of a flash crash. If you're lucky enough to have gotten in, like Pav and I did. Pav, I reckon you were probably more tactical about it. I just saw, this was a good time to dollar cost average in and buy a bit of a discount, and I just timed it perfectly. I'm not much of a chart guy, so a bit of luck involved there. But I sort of just bought in, some of my bigger holdings like Bitcoin, Solana, and Sui. Are tariffs good for crypto, or are they bad? So I think the main takeaway is, in the short term, they can lead to a lot of inflation, right? Particularly in the US, because you're now spending more money on, locally produced goods rather than goods coming from China, which are obviously cost a lot less to produce. And also, inflation is one. Also, they can lead to a stronger US dollar, and that is Trump's end game, right? He wants, the US economy to be in its strongest ever position by the time he's finished. And so these sort of tariffs can boost sort of the local economy, which leads to a stronger US dollar, which in fact typically does lead to a weakening crypto market, right? Because we see like a correlation between a strong US economy and weaker crypto, right? Or not so much economy, but more like the US dollar.
The dollar,
in specific.
Because it is globally traded in US dollar stable coins. So if that US dollar coin is relatively more stronger, it's going to take, it's harder for that crypto asset to be going higher. 100%. But I think a lot of it also was around just the uncertainty and a lot of it happening on a weekend. I think it just caused a lot of fear, and we see what happened when the market is unsure and fearful. This was a trade war, you could call it. We've seen the same thing with, I guess, in most recent time. What sort of calls to me when I saw a drop like this was the start of the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
Sure.
I think the candle almost looks identical. Not identical, but the way it sort of slid off a cliff, it's very much, it just reminded me of that exact same phase. Different part of the market cycle completely. By that stage, we were already in a bear market, whereas now it's a little bit different. Obviously, hopefully still thinking we're in a bull market. So
yeah, I think it did strike a lot of fear into, the crypto market in particular, because, even from SwiftX's point of view, we saw a lot of sells. From my point of view, I don't see those, flash crashes, particularly on the back of geopolitical events as a place to sell or to get super fearful. So I was holding on, and like I said, I dollar cost averaged into some of my larger holdings. But what was your sort of approach to the news?
Mine was just Bitcoin. I just knew. My thesis has always been that the next big move is Bitcoin moving. So Bitcoin dominance, like that's something we've talked about on the podcast for some while. We're sort of seeing that go home, put in its top, if you will. Then we really start to see that altcoin, alt season market propagate. So the Bitcoin dominance is just a metric that shows how much of the total market cap does Bitcoin occupy. So we've seen so much adoption stories of, banks now in the US being able to custody crypto and handle crypto. We've got the strategic reserves coming online. There's even talks of how they're going to fund that strategic reserve stockpile, which I know we're going to talk about very shortly. So for me, it just seems like all tailwinds are blowing behind Bitcoin right now. And for altcoins, like I still think they'll have their time in the sun, but I still feel like Bitcoin hasn't really had that, oh my God moment. It's in the media everywhere again. Like it's kind of like now, it's so sought after. So that was why I specifically just looked at dollar cost averaging. Also, that was honestly my approach too. Just Bitcoin, I saw certain key levels get wiped out, and I was happy just to, as we saw, just systematic buying. I just followed that buying as well because it was pretty uncharacteristic. But like one way I track the market is following something called the Coinbase premium. So measuring the spot prices that Coinbase is spending, compare that to, let's say, what Binance is spending. If Coinbase is paying a premium, it generally means that, let's say, the Coinbase, whose user base is mainly US participants, they're paying a higher price. So there's not enough stock to go around. They're paying above market rates. So that tells me there's demand. So I just basically followed that same demand into the early, I guess, let's say 9, 10 p.m. last night, and I sort of stopped buying at that stage.
But why does that indicate there's demand? Because it's like more of an indication of like the US retail market?
Coinbase could be institutional, it could be retail, you don't know. But let's say, for example, like a lot of the ETFs, they've got Coinbase as a custodian. There's speculation that, if you see a premium developing, it could be, direct action of those entities. And even if it's not, a lot of the wealth in the world is held obviously in US based entities. So, if they're all trading through a US exchange, I think it's just a good way to sort of proxy what each individual geography is doing on exchanges. So like Bitstamp might be another one you'd look for what's European action on the market for like a European sort of premium. So that was just, again, like we're talking about sort of strategies. That's what I was looking for. But man, still didn't expect to see. Cut
this
that.
Is what happens when we bring Daniel back. This wouldn't have happened with Lee here.
Fans are coming, guys.
Hey.
Let's go.
So I guess that leads into sort of what we want to touch on next is where do we go from here? Like, because we've had this big sort of sell-off, do we just sort of trade sideways for a little while? Are you looking, just as what you said before, like just focusing on Bitcoin for the next couple of weeks? Like, what's your approach there?
Look, I think there'll be leaders in the market when it comes to altcoins. I think it's just about, I know we've talked about in the past as well, looking at what's performing the best in the last 24 hours. So you can use websites like CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, and just arrange by performance very simply. You can even change it from measuring in US dollars to like their Bitcoin valuations, and you'll find assets that are actually outperforming Bitcoin in this bounce as well. So that tells me that, for something to bounce, someone's got to buy it, right? So if something is bouncing so hard that it's outperforming Bitcoin, probably is a nice little tell that there's some pretty big people buying up those assets, right?
Yeah.
But for me, what I'm looking for right now, I think a lot of altcoins will take maybe a couple of weeks to recover. Some won't, but I think largely for me, the game plan from here is Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin dominance, as I sort of spoke to before, like, the next step for me is like it puts in some sort of high, and what that looks like, I don't quite know. But that's what it looks like for me. The next coming couple of days, couple of weeks, just focusing on Bitcoin.
Yeah, because I know you spoke to, we were discussing yesterday, and you were like, you still want to see Bitcoin dominance potentially get to as high as 70% before we start to see like that, full altcoin season that we haven't really had yet. So it's currently sitting at about 62%. And I think it's at the highest it's been yesterday, this whole cycle, right? So you want to see that continue to rise?
Pretty much. Like, I think a lot of that capitulation, we saw a lot of people maybe shift value back to Bitcoin, or just that value was just disintegrated, and Bitcoin's market cap held up really well, obviously, in that dip. I mean, things were falling 60% and Bitcoin was just shrugging it off. It was at 95K. To some degree, it looks like a shrug off. To others, it probably felt like the world was falling apart. But stepping back at it now, like it's back at 101,000 US, I think at the time of recording. But I just want to see that continued strength. And again, look for signs like that premium that I talked about, that there is demand on the spot books, not just futures exchanges. That sort of tells you that there's real demand. And, Bitcoin, the reason why we're all drawn to it is its limited supply. So if there's more people buying it again than what's being produced, that's how you get those higher prices, very simply.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like, I guess yesterday's event also underlines the importance of having like a pretty strong exposure to Bitcoin, 8% in the 24-hour period. Whereas, you even look at XRP, the third biggest crypto in the market, lost like 25 to 30%. Some of the meme coins, as you said, were down 60%. So if you're overexposed to like small altcoins, it can really hurt in times like these. Whereas Bitcoin, it'll drop and it'll drop quickly, but it'll only lose like, less than 10% given, how big it is of a market cap these days.
I actually would say one other thing I'd look for is like, obviously, I think we both agree like meme coins are a big part of this cycle. Looking at now what people, I guess, have invested heavily in, communities and projects, thinking that this is the meme coin that's going to make it. Just because of the absolute diversity of meme coins that we have this time around in this cycle, I feel like there'll be a lot that don't come back from this sell-off, and there'll be some that do. And there's like a lesson to be learned there in terms of understanding where is value within meme coins and meme coin culture. So I just would also point out like that's a big thing to probably watch out.
Because in previous cycles we've seen like a bit of a trend of a rising tide raises all ships, right? But that might not be the case in this cycle because there's too many coins out there and there's not enough money for them all to succeed. So you might be right. The market might favor certain projects over others, and other projects just go to die.
But you'll be happy to know Filecoin's doing quite well.
Filecoin's still doing well. It continues to be in the top movers, just regardless of what's happening in the market. So good on
Filecoin community.
Okay, so yeah, you touched on this before, and we're going to break it down. So we've talked about a lot extensively in the last sort of 6 to 12 months about the potential Bitcoin reserve in the from the US government. So basically, what this means is the US government will start buying up Bitcoin strategically to keep on their balance sheet. If you want to use a company type term, in case of an emergency, right? Also just to keep their sort of
strategic reserve.
Yeah, strategic reserve, right? Like they have a petroleum reserve and they also have a gold reserve.
Yep.
I know Canada has a maple syrup reserve.
They do.
So countries do this just to sort of, keep it for a rainy day, I guess. But yeah, a lot of the Senator Lumens, I think Cynthia Lumens had proposed it prior to Trump coming into office, and Trump actually backed it, and he even said in speeches that he will support it. But a lot of concern has surrounded like how they're going to pay for this. The obvious one is like, we'll use taxpayer dollars to fund this, right? But the average US citizen doesn't exactly want his taxes going towards just paying for Bitcoin that he'll never get to see. You want your taxes to go to something that is tangible, right? Something that the people can actually use. So the thing that Senator Lumens proposed in her Bitcoin Act was that they revalue their gold reserve. So this might be getting a bit confusing, but essentially the US has more gold than any other country, company, person in the world. It owns about 5 to 6% of all the gold in the world. And they've currently got it valued at $11 billion. And that's from like the valuation back in like 1970 or something when the gold standard came to an end.
That's something that she was saying, that they had these gold certificates dated 1970. They haven't been repriced. So I don't think that's all their gold, but it'd be like a portion of their holdings.
Yeah, exactly. But since then, gold has, done ridiculous numbers. It's done about 55 times what that original price was. So in actual fact, that $11 billion in value is worth around, $650 billion. And so they have a lot of money sitting in this gold reserve, right? And Cynthia Lumens in this Bitcoin Act has proposed that they sell off some of that revalue it initially and then sell off some of it to pay for that Bitcoin reserve, which I think makes sense. And something that, exactly. And something that I didn't really know. And so, what do you make of that?
Again, like bullish.
Yeah.
Like I'd be waiting to see it all come together, but like if that's the route that they take, like it doesn't impact, like you said, the GDP of the country at all. It just rebalances what they're already holding strategically. So crazy adoption story. Like if you see the US do that, I think there's just a flurry effect on what other countries will do the exact same play.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing is that the US is one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin in general because of all the Bitcoin it sees, particularly from Mount Gox, Silk Road, which obviously the founder got released or pardoned by Trump. I
wonder if we'll get some of that Bitcoin back.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But because they hold so much Bitcoin already, it's not actually in a Bitcoin reserve. It's just kind of held by the US government, and they don't really, no one can really use it. I don't really know like what the process is of how they can utilize that. But imagine if they could just allocate that Bitcoin that they already own into this Bitcoin reserve. Like obviously their plan is to buy 5,000 Bitcoin a day or something, which, drives the demand up overall massively. But they already have like this huge stash that they could just allocate initially to keep, to kick it off.
Yep.
So anyway, bullish news.
Very bullish news.
But yes, you actually had a few other ideas for how they could fund the Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah, there was obviously the talk of tariffs. Like, I think as much as there's been some scary tariffs laid out, there'll be some probably more toned down strategic tariffs that end up sticking. Like last presidential cycle, Trump was there in 2017. Like they did introduce new tariffs, like trading tariffs, and they did stick. They generate revenue for the US essentially to some degree. So I do wonder if like some of those, that revenue, they do then feed off into purchasing a strategic reserve. And there's also an executive order that got signed today to set up a sovereign wealth fund in the US. So this is a pretty common practice in other countries such as Asia, the Middle East, where the government will basically have a fund which they generate revenue as a country and reinvest in this fund to then go out and make strategic purchases for the betterment of the country. So they might be building a whole massive highway across the country, upgrading all their hospitals, whatever. Like they basically have strategic corporate investments through this sovereign wealth fund that allows them to sort of over the long term and reinvest back into their country. So that's another way I think that's been hinted that the Bitcoin reserve could materialize. And again, they're using, revenue that the country is creating to feed that strategic acquisition.
Interesting. All the chatter at the moment is about the US government. Hey, like it gets a bit old, like just us talking about Trump and what's happening with the US.
It's just so much happening, but like every 2 or 3 days, it's just like everything's just changed.
It's definitely the biggest catalyst for any major movements in the market right now.
And everyone's looking at it too. So anything that happens, that's what the market's going to respond to. Like that's just very simply it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to know how much value the Canadian maple syrup reserve is worth.
There's like a doco on that I remember watching.
Really?
It was mental. Something about they were stealing barrels and emptying them and
that's crazy.
Falsifying. I can't remember what it was. It was funny. I was like, I can't believe this is real. Like a warehouse full of maple syrup.
That almost sounds like a joke.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. And then I also wanted to touch on something we spoke about last week, which is the DeepSeek news.
Oh, the AI.
So, the AI sort of wars happening between China and the US. So we spoke about DeepSeek being this, new solution that kind of competes with OpenAI and ChatGPT that came out of China that they only spent like $6 million on.
Yep.
So, and comparatively, I think OpenAI raised $17 billion. So it's literally, it's literally nothing compared to what OpenAI did. And everyone was like, we've overvalued AI, particularly in the stock market, even in crypto, like AI. The AI sector lost 50% of its value overnight. Yep. Since we spoke about that, Pav, it's come out. So like this industry analysis firm, Semi-Analysis, has come out and said that DeepSeek spent $1.6 billion on hardware and actually owned 50,000 NVIDIA GPUs. So NVIDIA actually bled the most from all that news coming out about, all the AI projects are overvalued. So NVIDIA lost 17% in a day, which is the largest single day drop in the US stock market.
Yeah.
And now it's come out, they actually spent all this money on NVIDIA chips and have all these NVIDIA chips, and they spent a lot more than $6 million. So I think it was probably a strategic move potentially by, China and trying to undercut the US stock market. But
just goes to show, like, obviously you hear a headline, right?
I know,
maybe it's not worth always taking at headline value. And again, like I think the tariff thing, we saw this happen this weekend, exact same situation. Headline scary, lots of unknowns, lots of volatility, but like as soon as we're starting to see all these headlines now go the opposite way, and the sentiment's going to 180. And that's why I reckon, like, even if we start to see this momentum shift of like, impose aggressive tariffs, now take them away, it's going to create a whipsaw in the market, and that's how you hit new all-time highs really quickly. And I think a lot of people aren't expecting that.
Yeah.
That's something I would say. Like if we get a decent close, decent data this week, there's nothing to say all-time highs can't come this month in Feb. Yeah.
Oh, calling it.
Yeah, I'm calling it.
Calling it. Oh, I hope you're right, Pav. I hope you're right. But the AI wars is something I didn't, expect to have to focus on, this year, particularly on the podcast.
But it's enough to cover, right?
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, is this going to be like a Cold War space race type thing between the US and China?
Just throwing shade at everyone's software.
Crazy times. Cool. Let's move on to top movers. What do you got for us, Pav?
Yeah, I know we haven't done top movers in a while, but I know we spoke at the top of the show about how there have been some altcoins outperforming Bitcoin. So I just wanted to shout them out now so people can go away, do their own research, look at them and keep track of them at home. So again, you can just use CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, and just arrange by 24-hour or 7-day, 30-day performance. I like to personally change the value from dollars to Bitcoin, and I've said that multiple times, but it kind of shows you at what point is an asset worth investing in that isn't Bitcoin, and I think that's a big part of like the value proposition for crypto.
But why is that important? Because like assets that are outperforming Bitcoin mean like they're beating the market essentially?
Correct. So if you're using Bitcoin as a market leader, and that's like the gold standard, if you can outpace what you consider the strongest horse in the race, that's where you find your edge.
It's basically like the benchmark, right?
Pretty much. Like you're easily finding what's outperforming a decent baseline for the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just to call out, this is a snapshot. It's going to change very frequently, but the last 24 hours we've seen Mantra DAO, Athena, Onyx Coin, Mantle, Fightcoin, Ondo, Tau, and Ray sort of lead the charge. So massive theme there being real world assets for me.
Yep.
DeFi. This is a bit of a shift. I know, like, for the longest period, we were just talking meme coins and infrastructure. We're seeing one meme coin, which is Fightcoin, Ondo being, again, real world finance, BitTensor being AI. So we are seeing a bid back on AI, which is interesting after all the things we just spoke about. And then Radium. So more of that meme coin infrastructure sort of space as well. I think this list will obviously joust and work itself out over the next couple of days. But very, very interesting to see DeFi for me and real world assets start to pull ahead. And I think it's pretty timely because I saw some before the whole markets crashed, Larry Fink coming out in the media, so CEO of BlackRock, talking about that they want the SEC to enable tokenization of stocks and securities.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a real push to enable US products to be pushed globally through the utilization of real world assets. So like Ondo Finance, for example.
Yeah.
Mantra DAO as well. So I think there's going to be maybe a narrative shift just under afoot right now.
And if we know anything, we know that BlackRock has a incredible record against the SEC, at getting things approved. So this is a bit different. The CEO is calling something out versus actually applying, for something like that. Yeah. But, if BlackRock's pushing for it, that's a good sign.
It's a good thing to be looking at.
Onyx Chain. So this one's an interesting one because I've seen it in the top movers recently and I didn't really know what it was. I'd heard of Onyx Chain before when JP Morgan launched their own blockchain and they called it Onyx Chain. Yeah. And I thought that was this. So this is different. So JP Morgan rebranded Onyx Chain to like Kinexis or something.
Onyx was a better name.
Yeah, I know. But maybe because they had a clash with this. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
But Onyx was previously called Chain, just Chain, and their token was CHN. Now the token is
XCN.
Yes, you're correct. XCN. So what they are an Ethereum layer 3 on Arbitrum. So Ethereum is the layer 1, Arbitrum is the layer 2, and Onyx Chain is the layer 3. Like, my question is, why do we need layer 3s at this point? Like, we've seen that, layer 2 adoption hasn't been as incredible as we had liked. Yeah. And people are migrating more to more efficient layer 1s like Solana and Sui, right? But we were looking into it, and some of the backers of this project, Onyx Chain, are huge. I'll just name drop a few of them. Yep. Visa, Pantera Capital, NASDAQ Capital, some of these massive traditional finance companies are backing this project. Yep. So that's all I can really give you guys for today because I didn't have enough time to do the proper research. But it's one that I'm going to keep an eye on for sure.
It's in that theme. I think we talked about just the next level of disruption coming in the money markets, right? So settlements, payments.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars go through that space. So if they can capture and make it more efficient, they're going to make so much money. So
sure, but
but the layer 3 thing, I don't know. ETH's got a lot of critics right now.
Yeah, and we spoke about it before, the process of bridging from ETH layer 1 to Arbitrum, and then you got to bridge it again. What's that process going to look like?
It just depends. Is this a consumer grade product? We're going to need to look into it. Is it just institutional? Because there's a lot to obviously go into to understand how does that protocol make money, what's their value prop. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I kind of agree. It's when you said layer 3, I was just like, all right, it was basically a meme coin.
Yeah. I actually invested in a layer 3. It was a bit of a punt.
Too. I think I did XAI. Did you do that one too?
XAI. No, my one was called DMT, and it's not a meme coin based on the drug. It was like a gaming network on Arbitrum. Yep. So I guess
this was gaming too. So
yeah, true. Okay, so pretty similar.
That's it.
Maybe we'll have a layer 3 season at some stage. I don't really know.
Maybe.
But yeah, watch the space.
Yep.
To finish off, I thought we'd do a little bit of just a segment on what we're currently doing, maybe some speculative call outs. You actually had a good suggestion of what's your biggest loss right now, and I want to ask you that exact question.
Yeah, biggest loss for me, it's one that I've just held Popcat down a very considerable amount. Was market leader for such a long time in terms of the meme coins, and everyone was speculating major central exchange listings. Hasn't quite happened. I'm still holding, thinking that the market cycle still got some more legs left in it. But that's probably my most underwater bag at the moment.
Yeah. Mine's on a similar sort of trajectory where I am dog with hat, so another Solana meme coin. One that I sort of just, chucked a bit of money out for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Don't recommend that.
No, it did well for a while.
It had a good run, but
it was on the Sphere.
Obviously, yeah, true. It was on the Sphere. Obviously, in times where the market's crashing, those meme coins typically bleed the most, and that's what we've seen. And as you said, are all meme coins going to, come back from this or succeed? Maybe not. So
maybe those with an ETF will do better.
Exactly. But it might be one of those things that, when you do make some gains on a meme coin, don't expect it to keep running and have, a huge bull market, because you might need to take profits then and there.
Yeah, it doesn't go up forever.
That's it. But look, one thing that I wanted to call out, because all the eyes are on, Bitcoin right now, and rightfully so, because, all the things happening in the US, and like you said, like Bitcoin dominance, we may see go to 70%. So I think that's a good call out. But I want to call out that when, we do see a bit more of a switch to the altcoins and a bit more of a sentiment shift, something that we haven't seen yet is Sui meme coins. So we've seen, meme coins pop off on Ethereum with the likes of, Pepe and Shiba Inu. Then we saw Solana with the likes of Bonk and Whiff and Popcat, like you said. Base as well. What do we have on Base?
Base was the most recent one, Toshi.
Yeah,
Brett as well.
But, Sui's had all this activity, right? And there's been a lot of eyes on Sui, particularly as as an emerging layer one.
Yep.
But we haven't really seen that sort of meme coin narrative play out.
It's a good call.
There's some pretty popular decentralized exchanges on Sui already, like Cetus. So like that's obviously a foundation for like a meme coin narrative.
Yep.
One that I was looking at was called Lofi. It's like a Yeti version of Pepe.
Oh, right.
So
that same sort of art style.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Similar sort of art style. I haven't actually invested in it yet, but I'm just keeping an eye on it. But I just want to call it out. I'm not saying, ape into Sui meme coins, but I think that could play out in the coming months if we.
I like it because it's a pattern we've seen regularly. When a chain gets popular, gets more users, they naturally migrate to some meme coin. Who knows what it's going to be, but it's going to be some, right? So it's just about being aware and just checking it out. I like it.
Yeah. What about you? Any speculative call-outs?
Oh, speculative call-outs. I think I sort of gave it in the top movers. For me, it's like when you see a crash like this, I've said it like a lot of times, just measure everything against Bitcoin and work out what's moving. So right now, like big tell for the market for me is big move to DeFi, real-world assets. That has never been a trend in the past. So it's usually always been layer ones. Like we used to see Sui, Say, Tia. This was like going back a year now. And we'd always see meme coins. We saw Pepe, saw Bonk, Popcat, like we said, a few others. So a bit of a shifting in the sands. I like it because, could give us something a little bit different to trade.
What would you say to someone who's maybe a bit inexperienced in the crypto market and they've gotten in and they see a crash like this and they're like, oh, it's the bear market, or, this is the end of this sort of bull cycle. Like, how is that different from, say, like a flash crash that's going to recover? Like, do you have anything that you particularly look at, or is it just an overall sentiment thing,
It's just investing in general, right? Like when's a good time, when's a bad time. That's everyone to sort of discover themselves, I guess, do your own research. It is about having a general understanding of what's going on in the world. Yeah. But even if you don't, you're just always putting in an amount that you can sleep at night with. I think that's, for me, the best advice, maybe potentially, or something to think about. Yeah. Where you're not sleeping last night because of what was happening in the market. If so, you've probably got too much exposure, or you're not doing prudent profit taking. If it's affecting your day at work, you're grumpy with everyone. Like that's a little bit normal. But you really got to step back and look at how is, your P&L affecting your life P&L, I think maybe is like a way to put it in perspective check. Yeah. But in terms of investing, it's very simple. Like if you're not taking profits, you're not going to see your account value sort of grow and stay growing. I think there'll always be like opportunities like this where the market dips quite aggressively. And we've seen it now twice and we've talked about it like, oh yeah, expect it again. We're going to be talking about the same thing in about 2 months' time, I bet you. 2-3 months, we're going to see this exact same thing. Yeah. And we'll be talking about how we've got one that's underperformed the market. Hopefully by then we've taken a little bit more off the table. Maybe not. But I would just say expect it.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting, and you made a good point there. You've got to have a full understanding of everything that's going on, right? Yeah. Like we saw this flash crash yesterday, but everything in the last couple of months has been super bullish in terms of like the US government support
fundamentals
for
are so good.
Crypto. Fundamentals are fantastic right now. And you kind of, I've got an example to refer back to, like back when I was looking more, at the stock market and the crypto market. Yep. And Facebook was going through sort of their issues with the US, or like, with Congress and lawmakers around like privacy, and even Mark Zuckerberg had to face Congress, and, the Facebook stock, dipped a lot or crashed, whatever you want to call it. Did that stop you from using Facebook products like Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp? Yeah, like perfect. It didn't stop me. So I was, everyone continued to use Facebook as usual, but the stock dipped
because there was fear and doubt.
Yes, exactly. So you might look at that as like, okay, well, it didn't actually change any of the fundamentals that back that particular financial asset, right?
Yep.
So you could probably compare that similarly to like a time like this where everything is looking good despite, a small term crash based on like tariffs, right?
Yep.
So
just the market putting its emotion in action. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can't predict it. Just got to expect it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was a long episode.
Yeah. I'm out of breath. Welcome back, Daniel.
Yeah, I was going to say, we almost got away without mentioning Daniel.
Yeah, producer Dan, he's back from Colombia. I spent a bit of time with him over there, so he showed me his home country, which was nice. But unfortunately, we've lost producer Lee, so R.I.P. Lee.
R.I.P.
But we're happy to have Daniel back.
We're happy to have you back, mate.
Yeah.
Don't feel like we didn't want you back.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll chat to you next week.
Yeah, cheers. Bye.